changed my setup again, hopefully for the last time. And I wasn't a huge fan of the way I was doing things prior to this. Everything just very laid out in advance, everything just very precise. Ultimately, I want to bring a little bit more looseness to the podcast, and I'm going to be throwing in some live streaming here soon. And I think live streaming gives me the opportunity to do that because with that, I can respond to comments live, I can review videos live, I can look at information live, which is good for me and good for the audience as well. And as someone who's a fan of people streaming their own content, not just politics, I think it adds a whole new level of just off the wall, on the fly kind of topics. And it's a little bit more entertaining that way. So now it's not just everything laid out in advance. It's more so, hey, let's go down this rabbit hole or let's go down that rabbit hole, and it gives us the opportunity to explore more things in a given period of time. So I'm hoping it will add some interesting aspects to the podcast, and so that's the way we're going to be doing things from now on. But this is officially going to be my NBA Finals reaction. And as somebody who lives in Indiana, now honestly, and this is probably going to get me a lot of hate, I'm a Warriors fan. The only reason I ever started watching the NBA was because of Steph Curry and the Warriors, and maybe I'll talk more about that another day. But obviously, you got to root for the home team if your home team is doing well and they're not facing your actual favorite team. And so, again, as somebody who lives in Indiana, you got to root for those Pacers, man. And so obviously not a good outcome for me or Indiana or for Pacers fans in general, but I'm not too brokenhearted over it. I'm brokenhearted for the sake of Tyrese Halliburton, not necessarily just that the Pacers lost, but for him specifically, because I think that he, for somebody who doesn't just blow up the stat sheet all the time like some of these other dynamic guards do, I think that he brings a lot of fun to the game of basketball. And Oklahoma City wins. I don't hate Oklahoma City. They're another small they're another small brand. I kind of got the feeling that there are a lot of NBA fans that are like elitist. You have these elitist fans that they're like, well, it's not the Lakers and well, it's not the Celtics or the New York Knicks, so we don't really care. It was a really good series. It was a really good series, and it's unfortunate that it ended the way it did. Honestly, when you look at the way that Oklahoma City had kind of struggled, I feel like they struggled with the Pacers in this series more than they really struggled with any other team throughout the NBA season. And then you have Tyrese Halliburton, who played through an injury, coming off an injury, starts lighting them up from 3-point land, and then he gets injured in the first quarter. I I believe that the Pacers would have won that game. I think that Oklahoma City had already kind of blown it. I think that they were going to blow it, and the Pacers were still up at the half. They were still up by one at the half, even though Tyrese Halliburton didn't play the entire second quarter. And if he would have been playing, especially starting out as hot as he did, I think the Pacers were going to pull it off. And so, a championship, a win's a win. You tip your cap to the Oklahoma City Thunder for being healthier. But it's kind of hard to look at it and look at the Pacers and the way in which they lost. Because, like I said, I think they would have won. And for them to lose in that manner, to lose the best player, Game 7 NBA Finals, that's tough. It's really tough. It's tough for Pacers fans. It's tough to be a Pacer fan. It's tough. It's also kind of tough for Oklahoma City. It's like, the opposite team's best player got injured in Game 7. I feel like how can you feel great about that? You still won the title, so kudos to them. But yeah, just unfortunate. And I don't know. I feel like the Pacers, I feel like they could definitely get back. I don't know. It really just depends on if they're going to trade Giannis and Giannis stays in the East. But the East is so pathetic. The East is so weak right now that you can really see anything happening. I was listening to Bill Simmons, him and a couple other guys talk about the NBA draft, and they were talking about the all the moves that the Atlanta Hawks had made, and they were like, yeah, like you throw some money on the Atlanta Hawks to make the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Atlanta Hawks weren't really that good last year, but it's the East, and the East just kind of sucks. So would it surprise me if the Atlanta Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals? Not a whole lot, I don't think, but I really think that it we kind of missed an opportunity. Indiana missed an opportunity a little bit because the East might be. I don't necessarily think the East will be better, but you always just got to go through the West. And they had them, man. They had Oklahoma City. They were right there. I really think they would have pulled it off if Halliburton hadn't got injured. But anything's possible with the East so bad. Anything is possible. So I really like the style of basketball that the Pacers play with. Just it's somewhat reminiscent of the Warriors a little bit. Just maybe less dynamic from the 3-point line because obviously you don't have Steph, you don't have Clay, you don't have the Splash Brothers duo, you don't have that designated enforcer like Draymond that you don't have that designated enforcer like Draymond that has a specific role. It was really a really interesting built team because they had Halliburton, who was the best player, and then they had all of these other guys that brought different parts to the team. I mean, you had Pascal Siakam, who has the playoff experience, who's won an NBA titles, so he's been there before, and he's been one of their more consistent guys. But you also have a guy like Nimhard, that's like Nimhard just hit a bunch of threes, or this other player hit a bunch of threes. And so you don't really expect them to have a great series in terms of scoring points, but there are like 7 or 8 guys on there that, hey, if we can get 30 points from this one guy in this one game, then it's going to help us out a lot. And the speed at which they play is reminiscent of the Warriors. And if you remember, back when the Warriors lost the 2016 finals, the Cavs, the way that the Cavs played was that they really slowed things down. I mean, purposefully so. It wasn't just like, yeah, we have a slower playing style than them, and we're going to lean into that. It's like, no, we're doing like half court offense. We're going to limit the transition. We're going to slow things way, way down. And the final score of game 7 in those finals, it was like 93-89. It was not a very high scoring game. And this finals game was not, uh, it was not a really high scoring game either. But I think part of that is just, it's game 7. These two teams have never been there before, and then also, of course, the Pacers are missing their best player, so that obviously takes away some of their offense. But with all of the injuries, this happened to Damian Lillard. This happened to Tyrese Halliburton. I think this is the same injury, the calf slash Achilles. This is the same thing that happened to Kevin Durant back in 2017, 2018 during the finals, where he initially injures his calf and then he heals up, he rests, and he comes back and he ends up getting a worse injury. And so this has happened to multiple players. And I mean, there was already debates about whether or not they should shorten the season or what's contributing to all this. But as far as shortening the season goes, here's the plan. Okay, I'm going to lay it out for you. This is going to be my alternative NBA season setup. Okay, so everybody get their pens. Everybody brace yourself. This is the way it's going to be. This is how they should set up the NBA from now on. And we're going to fix some problems, and we're going to fix some overall problems. Like we're going to hopefully eliminate the sitting of stars in the middle of the season and the resting, so much resting going on, and also solve a couple of problems that I personally don't like. Now, I don't mind the 82 game season in terms of content. I mean, if every player was playing 82 games, I think it obviously still works. It still works even when you rest the stars, but it's obviously not good for the fans. But so here's what we're going to do. First things first. We are getting rid of the conferences. And I know that the conferences are split up into divisions. I don't know what the divisions are. I don't think anybody knows what the divisions are. I don't think anybody cares about the divisions. This isn't like football. This isn't like the NFL. We're disbanding the divisions and we're disbanding the conferences. There is no Eastern Conference. There is no Western Conference. This is the NBA It's all one league. We're not separating any of the teams by location or conference or division or anything like that. Okay. The rule is going to be no conferences, no conference play. Every team plays every other team twice, once at home and once on the road. Okay. So if I'm the Pacers, let's say, for example, there's 29 other NBA teams. I am playing each of those teams twice. So 29 times 2, that's 58 games. Every team plays an extra game on Christmas weekend, and every team plays an extra game on New Year's weekend. So you have the 58 games plus the 2 holiday games. Every team plays 60 games. Okay, so we've already shaved 22 games off the NBA season. And since we are getting rid of the conferences, we are not doing the top 8 seeds from the West. We're not doing the top 8 seeds from the East. I'm tired of looking at these crappy teams in the play-in. Oh, look, if Atlanta does really good, or if the Pelicans win 7 of their last 10, they might sneak into the playoffs. I don't care about that. Nobody needs to see the Miami Heat get obliterated in the first round. Nobody needs to see that. Nobody cares about that. That's not interesting basketball. That's not good basketball. And the East is so bad. They are so bad. At this point, I would almost rather take the 12th seed in the West as opposed to the 8th seed in the East. So we're not doing top 8 seeds in each conference. We are doing the top 16 teams total, and we're seeding them 1 through 16, and we're doing the bracket that way. And it might be skewed towards the West for a while. It might be 12 teams from the West, which no longer exists, but you know what I mean. 12 teams from the West and 4 teams from the East. I think that would be more competitive. You wouldn't have these bottom feeder teams that were involved. Oh, look, they made the plan. Nobody cares. Those teams get annihilated immediately almost. And so we don't need to see that. So 60 games, no conference play. Top 16 teams get into the playoff. And since we have cut so much time out of the season because we got rid of the 22 games, we now actually have time to give teams a substantial amount of rest between the regular season and the postseason. So once the regular season ends, we can say, hey, everybody gets 1 week or 2 weeks, 2 full weeks of rest before the playoffs start. And even at that point, after the Western Conference Finals, you'd probably still have some time to give each of the finals teams a week worth of rest before you start the series. And so everybody's healthy going into the playoffs, everybody's healthy going into the finals. Teams get a chance to rest up. It's not one of those things where, oh, my third best player got injured in game 5 of the Western Conference Finals, and I don't know if he's going to be back in time or he's going to miss the first 3 games of the NBA Finals. You give them an extra week or 2 to rest, and hopefully all the teams will be fully functional. They'll have all their players and everybody will be healthy. So we get the best basketball possible. Now, for the sucky 14 teams that do not make the playoffs, we are getting rid of the NBA lottery. The NBA lottery is not a thing anymore. I think it's kind of stupid. And that way you don't have to deal with the whole conspiracies of, ooh, did they rig this so the Mavericks get reimbursed for their historically bad trade with the Lakers, which helped out the Lakers in a magnificent way. And, there's a huge fallout from the Dallas fans. Oh, here you go. Here's the number 1 pick. We're getting rid of all of those conspiracies. What we're doing, we're taking the bottom 14 teams. And in that week's worth of time between the regular season and the postseason, whether it's 1 week or 2 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, the 14 worst teams in the NBA, they are going to be put into a single elimination college basketball style bracket where the winner of that bracket gets the number 1 overall pick. Okay, so it's not based on luck. It's not based upon how much you tanked. It's based upon, hey, there's a young team in the NBA, or there's a team that was right on the cusp. They didn't make it into the playoffs, but hey, now they get a chance to get the number 1 overall pick, which will make them even more relevant the next year. And so if you win this little tournament, this end of season tournament for the number 1 draft pick, you get the winner gets the number 1 draft pick. second placer gets the second, third gets the third, fourth gets the fourth, all the way to 14th. And then the rest of the drafting order is arranged based upon who gets eliminated when in the playoffs, like it normally does, right? So whoever wins the NBA Finals gets close to the last pick in the draft. Okay, so I think that solves the problems. Like all the problems that we have about stars resting and the season needs to be shorter and we're limiting the injuries and we're getting rid of the draft lottery. I think that solves a lot of problems. So that's my plan. That's my idea. You know, if the NBA randomly decides to adopt that out of, you know, just out of thin air, out of nowhere, then I'm going to start making some phone calls because I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. I don't think there's very many holes in that. Now, obviously the major problem is that the revenue that is brought in with the TV deals and the revenue that is brought in for the franchises by having 82 games, do I think that they're actually going to sign up for cutting out what would be about, you know, like a fourth of their games? Do I really think anybody's going to be down for that from a financial perspective? Probably not. But I think I think that you get to shorten the season by doing it my way. You get to shorten the season. You get to eliminate the sucky teams that are in the East, the bottom feeders of the league. You get no draft lottery, and you get more rested players. So that's my take.